My name is Joseph Peterson. This is my near-fatal experience as a result of a concussion and an altercation. I was practically atheist before this encounter. I did my best to read the Bible, though, because religion sparked my interest. I was confused, though. I could relax and enjoy life without worrying about going to heaven or hell. Grew up to be an optimistic person since the majority of the things that influenced me were positive and enjoyable, rather than negative and awful. In my humble opinion, this is the case. In February 1990, I went to a public party and drank heavily. When an incident happened, party officials called for assistance from the police. After 2 officers took me from the gathering, they led me outside and requested that I remove my jacket with the insignia on it. When he saw the phrase "Havel for President," he knew he had found his man. Immediately following the Velvet Revolution, all Czech Socialist Republic police were needed to be communist. Our debate was tough because of the ambiguity of the situation, which affected both the revolutionaries and the police. But I've been a hero before, I reminded myself. So it's no surprise that I was concerned about having the sign removed. When they decided to remove it forcefully, the confrontation erupted. The odds are stacked against an inebriated individual without a pistol against 2 armed cops using truncheon billy clubs. I received a torrent of hits, the most recent of which certainly landed on my skull. I'm unsure. I was so intoxicated that I can't remember much. Recall tripping and falling. Lying on the freezing grass, I kept convincing myself that this was it. I was going to die. According to what I overheard, one of the cops stated, "You killed him." After laying down for a time, I noticed a drunken, tired man laid out on the grass by himself. My initial impression was, why is he still lying here? That man could be disabled. The grass outdoors is frozen, so I'll have to wake him up or bring him in. Something dreadful is about to happen to him. Therefore, I must act soon. Nonetheless, I thought, that's strange as I examined his characteristics to ascertain his identity. I identify this man because he wears my jacket and shoes and has my hair color. It took me a while to realize the man was actually me. Seeing a remote version of myself was absolutely new to me. It was unexpected. When I realized I had no idea how to return to my body, I decided to seek help from my wife. I was almost back at my place the moment the notion of coming home entered my head. My wife was reading a book in our bedroom as my children slept in their own rooms. Her body twitched as I walked into the bedroom, and she cocked her head to stare at me, as if I were the source of her distress. Unfortunately, she had no way of hearing or seeing me, so I returned to collect my corpse. When I returned, my corpse stayed immobile in the exact same location. I suddenly felt a sense of liberty and peace. My anxiety had lessened, and I felt wonderful. A tiny, luminous dot loomed above me, drawing me closer. After a while, I felt a tug toward that light, and at first, I moved faster and faster toward it. I was moving at a snail's pace before I began to accelerate. At that tremendously fast speed, I felt like I was racing towards the edge of space, and I genuinely feared dying. I believed I was in a tunnel since everything was moving so swiftly. I had a unique knowledge experience on my flight because I could always expect a nonverbal response to my questions. I was absolutely immersed in the brilliant brilliance from the minute I arrived there. An overwhelming sense of immense affection overtook me. When I became aware of this, an entity, a component of the light, was communicating with me nonverbally. There were no hidden agenda elements during our chat because the entity already knew all of my secrets. He knew everything I had ever done. There are no falsehoods here. From the moment I was born until that exact second, the monster was aware of my whole life, including every moment, thought, and feeling. Suddenly, a timeline of my life appeared. We silently discussed our thoughts while we watched it. Seeing myself in this distanced, third-person perspective was uncomfortable to me. Because of this, I classified the other person as ugly or harsh whenever they did something wrong during my panorama. Being the one passing judgment on myself felt awful. I was crying a lot because I could feel the weight of my previous acts and comments bearing down on me. Luckily, the thing was showering me with love while comforting me. After completing the panorama, I was informed that my time on Earth was limited and that I needed to return. My emotions welled up again as I pondered, why must I return when I am experiencing such pure joy? It's so beautiful up there. I'd never return to that filthy world. The creature attempted to encourage me to return immediately by showing me sights from my future, but it had no effect. There was no feeling of time, therefore I had no notion how much time had passed. The period might have ranged from 1 hour to 10 years. The next thing I knew, I was floating above my body while an emergency physician cared for it. I returned to my own body in an instant, then it's back to reality after a few sneezes. They might have liked to take me to the hospital, but I stood up and walked away. I awakened the next morning with a hazy head and a weird dream swirling through my mind. I felt it strange that my spirit had not been intoxicated. Everything that happened while I was in my spirit was vividly remembered, yet my drunken body was completely blank. My life returned to normal about 2 or 3 years after my trauma, until I came upon a tiny magazine with a few sentences from Raymond Moody's new book. I had almost forgotten about the dream. It was clear to me that the dream was real. At that same moment, the love and the entire event returned to my consciousness. I was taken aback. Something about another person's unseen, loving presence stood out to me. What exactly are you trying to tell me? Asked as I sobbed. Could you please tell me how I can become as kind as you are? There was no reaction, but I felt prompted to open the Bible and begin reading shortly thereafter. It became crystal clear to me very instantly. At that point, everything in my life changed. Since then, my guiding principles have been to set a caring example and do my best to bring joy to everyone I meet. Unfortunately, I had a heart attack in October 2012 because my body couldn't handle it. Even after 5 years, I tried to bring it up with my wife, and she still showed no interest. My children are aware of it. I believe they are living in a more enlightened reality than I was at their age. Some are pleased to hear about it. Hope it has a beneficial impact on them. People who live dishonest lives would prefer not to hear that I am foolish, but I do have enemies. Listening to my narrative makes them tremendously nervous. I don't care, they'll be aware of it anyway. I always speak with the persons involved before making a final decision, whether at work or at home. Whenever feasible, I try to balance the prospective benefits and drawbacks, as well as the positive and negative results. When I believe it will be fantastic, calculate how many people it will influence, both positively and badly. Even if a few of my loved ones are unhappy, the majority must always be content, and this is my primary purpose. I need to start arranging for my own health care now that I'm too frail to maintain my Spartan lifestyle. However, I am aware that the route leads to a dazzling light in which all doubts about love vanish. So how can I change my mind? When it comes to death and the afterlife, I am certain that there is nothing to fear. It will be nice to reconnect with the light in the same area as previously. When I am full of love, my true home is there, not here. Even though my wife and 3 children are securely settled, I have 2 grandchildren, and my life is prosperous. Nobody will ever forget it. It is never far from my mind.